Hang on time.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We are at Satchel Towers, and I'm here with Henry Otterwell, who is part of Satchel's training team, and he is part of the group of software experts who are tasked with introducing Show My Homework to its users for the first time. I'm also here with my long-term friend, Naimish Gohill, who is founder and CEO of Satchel. He is a former assistant head teacher, and 6 years ago he saw the need for a homework software in his own school. And as of 2017, Show My Homework is in 1,500 schools around the world and serves 2.5 million teachers, students, and parents. I'm Martin. You can find me at ICT Magic on Twitter, and I'm also a primary school teacher, and I'm editor of UKEdChat, UKEd magazine. But enough about me, let's talk about the session. So I'd like to remind everybody that you can send in your questions through the chat section, which should be along your screen. And we'll get to those at the end of the session. And what I really want to do is ask you, what can teachers get from this session?
Great to see UKEdChat grow.
Oh, thank you.
I guess the key things for everyone on this webinar today is really the learnings that we've had over the last 5-6 years working with thousands of schools across the UK. And they all sort of stem from the very early days when I was a classroom teacher dealing with this problem firsthand in 2 schools in West London. So hopefully, we know homework's a really big challenge in the current climate where we've got budget constraints. Teachers do so much more than just being a teacher. They're data analysts. There's never enough time. We know homework's definitely not going away, and when it's done effectively, it makes a really big impact. So hopefully today, Henry, is going to share some of the key takeaways. These essentially stem from how can we help teachers save time? How can we really make homework worthwhile? If we're asking students to do it during family time, that's absolutely critical. How can we help teachers who are in the trenches teaching 4 or 5 lessons a day to really set differentiated homework, especially as classes are getting bigger and bigger? And ultimately, how can we make it, the whole process, transparent? So we can provide that helicopter view for teachers, students, parents, and the school itself in terms of the leadership team. And that ultimately comes down to the tracking. As we know, tracking homework is a nightmare. By the time you've done it, often the data is out of date. So hopefully Henry's going to share some tips on how we can make this process really, really easy. And ultimately, we'll wrap up and, we'll share some of the things that we've combined into a homework policy that everyone attending the webinar today can download and make use for their own school. So yeah, on that note, I'll pass it over to Henry.
Yeah, so this information that we've compiled and we're going to go through is this is an accumulation of everything that I've experienced from going to school. So I've gone into hundreds of schools across the UK. I've met thousands of teachers. And what I've done basically is I've talked to them about their existing systems. So what they've been using in their schools at that point to help them, to aid them. So speaking to them, finding all of their great advice, and essentially combining that into something that everyone can take away and learn from this.
So obviously teachers don't have endless time. Time is very precious to them. What kind of things can you do to help us? What kind of tips can you give to try to save time for teaching in the classroom? I know from personal experience that homework takes up an incredible amount of time, not just to create and to give, but also to get the feedback about and also to feedback to the children, teachers.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there's a lot on teachers' plate at the moment. So like Naimish was saying, the expectations of a teacher these days is far more than homework. It's far more than the classroom. There's a lot of other things that you're expected to do. And that obviously extremely limits your time. So what we try to do is focus on making that time more efficient and spending that in ways which are way more productive, that will be able to help you with your career, essentially. Mm-hmm. So the first piece of advice that we'd like to say to members of staff, or the one that's been recommended to us, is to build a resource bank. So many schools, many teachers have purchased some form of content along the way. That could be a lesson plan, that could be some resources, some revision guides. So combining all of that together and building that catalogue, and just reminding members of staff that that's there. So having your SLT, your heads of department, speaking to the other staff and saying, actually, we have this piece of resource. You're not needing to create this every time. You can use that for your classes. You just need to make sure that it's everyone knows how to use that content. So if it's an online source, making sure everyone knows how to use these things. And you need to make sure it's labeled clearly, that you can find these at any time and pull these up.
Mm-hmm. And that's particularly useful for when staff may be coming and going from that particular school.
Yeah, exactly. So building upon that year on year, you're building up those resources so you can pull out and you can set for a certain topic. You can change it when the topics change. So when the curriculum changes, you can slightly adjust it over the years as well and make sure it's relevant for your classes at that point. Sort of leads me into my next point about actually investing in content partners. So this is something that's great. If you're in the opportunity, if you have the opportunity or in the position to actually invest in content partners, we really recommend it. And the reason I say investing is because you are going to get a lot of feedback from this. You're going to get a lot of time saved. You're going to get a lot of great results from that small investment at the beginning. And this is going to save you time every day. So if you're taking this next year, you can take that piece of homework and you can set that straight away. You just need to, again, make sure people know how to use this and make sure that they know how to access this. There's no point having these great resources if people can't take that and then use that at a later date. So there are providers such as Collins, MyMaths, Oxford University Press, that they create all of this content in line with the current curriculum. So they have that for all of the topics that you can take and you can reuse that because they've generated that. So that's a lot less time that you're going to have to spend creating that because they've done all the hard work for you. So that could be lesson plans, revision guides, homework questions that you can use at any point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fantastic.
So my last tip for this is going digital. So there's a lot of, you've got these resources you've built up over the years, but they can sometimes be hard to find. They can be squirreled away in filing cabinets, little pieces of paper and worksheets, often quite hard to find. The benefits of going digital are massive. Using online storage platforms such as Dropbox, et cetera, out there, storing all of these files in a well-organized manner so members of staff can get access to these and pulling them up whenever they need to. Something I've also found in some advice by speaking to staff as well is setting up email threads. So a subject thread, you could send an email about a piece of homework that you've created or a piece of content that you have, and you can, again, take that at any point. Or even just using local storage from your computer, so your school servers or your local computer. As long as that is well organized, you have that sorted out by topics, you have that sorted out by year groups and subject, you'll be able to instantly get access to that and use that just in a few moments. So how we do this at Show My Homework, so we actually have a partnership with Collins. So they provide amazing content for Key Stage 3 and 4 that teachers can get access to and they can reuse in seconds. On a global scale of that as well, you mentioned how we operate in over 1,500 schools worldwide. That's not just the UK. You can actually choose to publish your content to the greater Show My Homework community. You can get access to that on a subject level, on a topic level, or even just in a year group. So you can find great content, whether that's just looking for inspiration or you're looking for a set piece of homework on something. You can take that and you can reuse that in moments.
You're using the resources from so many other teachers who are teaching maybe very similar things to yourself. That's just a fantastic resource.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing. And we found that in one of our schools, so this is an amazing figure that we're really proud of. So by looking at one school, so one individual school, the time that they've saved purely from reusing homework alone. So not some of the amazing features like tracking or grading or the communication things. Just from reusing homework alone, they've managed to save 4 weeks of teachers' working time, which is a big figure. So that's time that could be spent doing much more productive things. So pushing students into learning other things outside of topics or just engaging them or creating amazing pieces of homework. Okay.
Yeah. No, and I think just to touch on that, I think it also gives visibility to each other. When you're working in, teaching, I always found is quite a lonely profession. And what this allows you to do is actually for yourself, you can actually see what homework are my colleagues setting, how can we work with each other, how can we avoid, recreating the wheel, as Henry mentioned. And it's just really interesting to be able to see that by different departments, different year groups, especially if you're, one example I always look back on is like when we had Black History Month. It was really fascinating to see across the school all the interesting projects that teachers and the subjects were creating on Black history. And before we never had that visibility. And just from a curiosity perspective, it was just really worthwhile.
But more than that, people can much easily collaborate together, and if they're doing one particular topic, another subject area maybe to add real value to that as well, which would be really fantastic. So people will be able to see what other people are doing. That's really good. So obviously we're trying always to do as best as we can for our students. We're trying to do the best lessons we can. And how can we ensure that homework is of the best quality? Not just because senior leaders are looking over our shoulders, and not to mention the big O, of course, but how can we, for our pupils and for our community and for ourselves, how can we make sure that homework is as good as it can be?
Yeah, like Namish said at the beginning of this, it's important if you're asking students to complete homework and spend so much time outside of school completing this, you want to make sure that it is worthwhile for those students. It's not just a numbers game with homework. You have to make sure that homework is worthwhile. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot less effective. So you want to make sure students actually get something out of that, and quality is often the thing that you want to focus on. It's quite often quite easy to put the responsibility on SLT members or heads of department, whereas in fact you want to spread it out. It's everyone's opportunity to learn, everyone to push themselves further. So looking at that across the subject, you want to put the ownership on every member of staff within that team. So playing to strengths is a great thing that we've spoken to. So speaking to teachers up and down the country, meeting all kinds of people who have been teaching for 2 weeks, or people who have been teaching for 20 years. The thing you want to do is you want to level the playing field. You want to get everyone with the same ability. So if you've got those teachers who've been here for 20, 30 years teaching, the chances are they're sitting on a gold mine of resources. So things that they've built up over time, amazing piece of homework that they've set. They've changed year on, year out, slightly to adjust to the topics or whatever's being learned. Being able to offer up those resources. So if you are that seasoned member of staff, you are that veteran, you've got these great resources, offering that up to the greater team. So seeing it as a team, because that's what it is at school, everyone's working together to the common goal. Offering up that thing. So even if you've been in the school a year, or even if you're on training within the school, you can see these great resources and you can use that for your class and lessons as well.
And that culture of collaboration and for the greater good of the pupils is very important. Yeah, I agree with that.
So obviously doing this, you have to make that homework available, and you have to make sure people know that that content's out there. There's people could be secretive, they could be hiding this stuff away, not on purpose, just because they use it and they think it's habit. They're not thinking about how other people can be using this.
So many times I've gone into people's classrooms and I've said, oh, I can't think of this good idea for whatever it may be. And they've just gone, there's a memory stick, piece of paper, whatever it may be. And they've got exactly what I need. Maybe with a few tweaks, but it's there for you. And there's so much of this reinventing the wheel, which could be avoided.
Yeah, so it's drawing on the experience and drawing on skills that people have acquired over their time learning. Going on further from that, so if we're looking at making the homework available and boosting that availability across the subject, heads of department, there's a reason the heads of department, they know that things, they've learned this, they've spent time within the subject. They can offer up and they can create pieces of homework for the rest of the subject to use. So the rest of that subject, they can take those great pieces of homework and they can use them for classes. Not only is it a great format for them to say, this is what we expect, this is how long we want students to be spending on it, it's also they can offer up their knowledge of things that they've learned over their time. Again, you just need to make sure that that's accessible so people can use that on a daily basis. sharing out that responsibility further to teachers as individuals. You want people to be pushing their own homework they're created, not just looking at people who've been there for 20, 30 years. Letting people know, I've created a great piece of homework, send out an email to the rest of the member of staff. Here is this great piece of homework. Feel free to use this. Feel free to offer your input on this as well.
And you've mentioned about digital platforms as a great way to push these things out. And I think creating that borrowing culture is a really important aspect of building the team.
Yeah, so it's changing the perception. It's not stealing or taking someone else's work at the end of the day. Like I've mentioned, or like we've discussed beforehand, the ultimate goal for school is to get students and give them the best opportunities outside of school. So giving them those resources, everyone working together as a team to help that. It's not changing; it's sharing that best practice amongst the members of staff. So how we do this? So we Show My Homework. Luckily, it stores every single piece of homework within the system. So what happens on Show My Homework stays on Show My Homework. That's something I always like to say. So you can create a great piece of homework. You can come back to that year after year. You can choose to set that for your classes just in a few seconds. It doesn't just have to be your own piece of homework. You can reuse other colleagues' piece of homework. So whether that's you're collaborating on a piece of homework, you can take that and you can set that in seconds. You can search using our search features on there for individual topics using a search bar, or you can actually just search for English Year 8 homework, and you can find everything that's relevant within that. So boosting that culture of collaboration, not everyone pitted against each other in the staff room as such.
And what about those interesting lessons that I find, those interesting resources that I find on Show My Homework? If I wanted to use it but wanted to tweak it, add to it, is that easy to do?
Yeah, so you're not confined to something just as you reuse it. Just as if you printed something off the internet, if you downloaded something or writing something up, you can make tweaks to it. You can make those edits to it. Like I mentioned, everything gets stored into there. So 8 years down the line, the topic might have changed a little bit. It might have been, the approach might have been a little bit different. You can still take that great piece of content and you can edit that in line with the curriculum as it changes as well.
And I guess just to add to that, Martin, you'll appreciate this, being a teacher. We actually saved the homework in a format that was ready to use last time. And I've always found when I'm reusing homework or for another class during the next academic year or another term, I'd find myself having to sift through my USB stick or go through the school network drive. But of course, my USB stick lets me down last minute. The school network drive, the folders have changed. What we do is, if you've actually attached a file or a link, it's all in the format that that was good to go last time. And that's you can really only appreciate that benefit if you're teaching day to day and have experienced that. But we think it's really, really important to be able to do that. And yeah, I guess the one other bit that I just want to touch on was around the accessibility bit. One of the barriers to improving homework is making it accessible. And I guess with technology today, whether it's with tablets or smartphones, connectivity, I think if you can make homework accessible on many different devices, online as well as offline, because we have to remember a lot of the schools today, they're old buildings where the walls are really, really thick, where you don't necessarily get good Wi-Fi, or whether you're a student who's traveling from school on a bus to go home, you may not have data. And so the ability to actually serve your homework offline is a really, really crucial part of making it accessible, in a sense, 24/7. And I just think, whether it's our technology or other technology that allows you to do that, that's definitely a question that everyone should ask, before going down a digital route.
So combining the digital element and the on-demand element as well. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, the idea of access actually brings us nicely on to the next point, which is differentiation. So takeaway homework has been somewhat of a buzzword lately. Is there value in it? I've used it myself many times, and I like to be able to give my students the choice of how they do it, obviously within a remit, but Where's the value in that, do you think?
Yeah, there's no doubt that or shying away from the fact that classes are growing. So with potentially 30, maybe even 40 different students with different learning styles, it can often be really difficult to differentiate that homework for individual students, unless you are creating 40 different pieces of homework on every single topic, which I'm sure no one wants to do. So what you then have to do is you have to look at dividing homework, your class up in other ways, and how you can actually differentiate your homework without creating much more work for yourself, and again, saving time, which we've been talking about, boosting productivity. So how we split classes up and how homework tasks is pace, level, and style. And I'll go into a little bit more about this. But yeah, these are our favorite options and how we do these. First of all, pace. Setting that optional homework for students is a great way to get students to learn. So they can learn as fast or as slow as they like. And this can be set over summer holidays, this could be set over Christmas breaks, etc., etc. So giving students the option to complete this homework. Incentivizing also helps as well. So the students that do complete that, they can get rewards. That could be a praise system that you use within your school at that moment, or another way that you can incentivize that, but actually rewarding those students and letting them do it at their own pace, etc. So own level, inquiry-based homework is great. So students can go in depth into our topics, and they can go as far into it or tread lightly into the subject if they want to. So an example of this, where I've spoken to teachers, is a great piece of homework they like is getting a student to research a topic. They could read the newspaper for that. They could read a couple of articles. They could go to their local library. They can find all these papers. They can go onto university websites and they can find all of these dissertations that have been published on excellent topics. They can really go in as far as they like into this topic. So giving students that opportunity to differentiate it themselves based upon level. And our last one, style, this is probably the hardest one to do, really. Like I mentioned, you've got lots of students in the class, they all learn different ways. Auditory, aesthetic, etc., etc. You all know how these different types of students can learn. The best thing to do, though, is to rotate your homework types within the subject. So within a topic, try a couple of different options to give each individual student an opportunity to maybe do what they're best at within that. So that could be a quiz, that could be spelling tests, that could be other homework types that you've created. Rotating a couple of those throughout a topic, just so students get that opportunity or they get that advantage. A great piece of homework, which I've actually seen going into a school, is where members of staff ask a student to go away and research something and create an interview. So they can mock up an interview about this, they can write an article about it, or they can even create a vlog, so they can film themselves talking about that topic. So depending on how these students learn, letting them do it their own way. But the importance is to rotate it, so not always doing one, giving those options to all of the different students. So we cater for this directly within our system. So we offer a variety of different homework types that members of staff can use. So we have quizzes, we have spelling tests that can be completed on iOS devices or mobile devices built in as our apps. So this is something that we train all of our schools to use. We show them how they can use these things from the get-go, so they can use these and cycle through them. So I mentioned quizzes. This is a great way to provide instant feedback for students, so they can quickly see how well they've done on a topic. You can really change the range of it, so you can differentiate it by putting in different levels of difficulty, so adding in harder questions, just like it would be with an exam worth more points, etc., etc. And we have this system built in directly. If you don't use one of these systems, so if you don't have, you can. So you can use things like Google Forms, and you can create your own multiple choice quizzes instantly, anonymous for students, and those responses will be sent instantly to you. You can have varying levels of difficulty to, again, cater for that and differentiate them.
So for those teachers who want to experiment with things like vlogging, how can the Show My Homework platform cater for that?
So one of the great things that Show My Homework offers is we offer online submissions for homework. So I know when I was at school, one of the most common excuses was I've lost my USB or the printer's broken, etc.
Yep.
So yeah, probably still people getting that excuse at the moment. With the online submission feature, it takes all of that away. Students can upload a file directly to the teacher. They can view that directly within the platform. They can download that individual student's attempt, or they can download the whole class's attempt as a zip file. So students go out, they can research this topic, they can film their information about it. So everything that they found, they can film themselves talking about it. And often that's going to help them remember these subjects further down the line as well, because they've sat there and they've gone through these topics. So a student can then upload that directly to you. You can grade that and put that directly in the system. Yeah.
All right, super. Well, let's turn to transparency. And obviously, this is quite an issue with homework, not just for pupils, but also for senior management that need to know what's going on. So, for example, many teachers are required, myself, we have to make sure our medium term planning is there on the head teacher's desk every Monday morning. But that's not always the best use of time. So are there better ways of doing that? What kind of things can...
Yeah, so transparency is tough, and it's tough for a lot of people for a variety of different reasons. Looking at it on a teacher level, it's hard to know exactly what's going on in your school. So I can't see, as a member of staff, what's going on in another subject. I can't see how much homework is being set there. I can't see what lessons they've got. This information is quite hard for me to access at this point. I'd have to send emails around, go to the staff room to find individuals, or chase them around the playground, up and down the corridors, whatever I need to do just to find out that information. So it's quite time consuming, quite a hard process. And there's no set expectations with that homework. So you can't see that transparency. So what should be being set, etc. And that's going to help a lot of people, which we'll talk about later with the homework policy. On a student's level, students can get overwhelmed on homework. If a student's not handing in homework, we can look at why. So maybe they're receiving, they've got 6 deadlines on the same day, so they're trying to do it all the night before. So we can look at spreading out and evening that platforms.
I think that's quite common, the fact that teachers simply don't know what other colleagues are doing and when those deadlines are. So you may have one week where there is almost no homework, and then another week when there are overwhelming numbers of tasks.
Yeah, and then the parents as well. So students can be somewhat unreliable messengers, that information isn't being filtered home in the correct manner, how much homework they're doing, what that homework is, and everything that they need to assist them to do that homework. It's quite hard for that information, and a lot of the time it's that won't actually come out until things like parents' evening, which are limited. They couldn't be every night, they can't be every week, unfortunately. Fortunately for some students. But yeah, so offering up, and there are all the problems that we have with transparency.
And for my own teaching, I know that parents, one of the biggest concerns they have, and the reason why they come to my primary school classroom door, is to say, oh, well, this homework doesn't sound quite right. And usually, as you say, the messenger hasn't delivered the message quite right. And that transparency is ever so important.
Yeah, so yeah, 100%. And one of the ways to combat this is to share what's going on in your school. So the way to let people know what's happening is obviously to talk about it, to publicize it with the greater school community. One of the ways, again, which Nemish will talk about later, is the homework policy, but that's going to help everyone across the subject. So knowing the expectations of how much homework they should be setting on a weekly basis or a fortnightly basis. And you can also pass that information on to parents, so parents know what to expect, because we have that clear guideline set in place of they should be receiving this much homework on these days. Parents can get more involved with that home learning and boost that transparency that way. Using things like, so you can do this by creating shared spreadsheets. So I've been into schools before where they have a single Excel file in their school server. So every member of staff can go in and they can put in the information that they're creating a piece of homework. So all of the different tabs with the different subjects, members of staff can go in and they can put that information in there. It sounds like a time-consuming thing, but it does help. So it's that transparency. So again, everyone knows what's happening in the school at that point. You can use project management tools. There's things like Trello, where you can put information in, you can tick things off as it's done, and put other resources that people can use directly online. And even grade books. So sharing those grades amongst members of staff. So like I mentioned, it's hard to know what's going on in a student's gradebook. If I'm a form tutor, I can't see how well as one of the students is doing in English or in maths if I don't teach them that a lot of the time. So making that public, so putting that information out onto a system, so again on the server, so other members of staff can access that and have a look at that. And yeah, so like I mentioned about parents' evenings, it's hard to contact parents if it's not on a parents' evening. So putting in newsletters, so it could be talking about combining that gradebook that's accessible for everyone, sending out a monthly newsletter to parents, letting them know the grades for their students. It could be homework clubs, so if the students have access to the homework club, sending a message home about what that student's been completing and why they were in the homework club, etc., etc. Emails or text, they're really just going to let parents know what is going on in their son or daughter's life. And that's going to really encourage that home learning because they know what's going on. It's hard to help a student if you don't know what's going on in their lives. And really, that's ultimately going to create a lot more positive relationships with teachers because they know and they're helping their students along the way. Mm-hmm. So we do that. We have a public homework calendar. So as a student, as a parent, as a member of staff, you can get access to this homework calendar wherever you are. So whether that's on your mobile device, whether that's on your desktop computer, you're at work, you're getting synced to these notifications, you can receive that instantly. So you can see everything with the full detail of a piece of homework just in a couple of clicks of the button. So you can see how long your son or daughter should be spending on the piece of homework, the full outline of that topic, any resources that are attached. And with that knowledge and with that transparency, that's really going to help with that home learning.
Mm-hmm. You say that they can see everything. I assume that's filtered down to the individual pupil's timetable.
Yeah, so parents logging into the application, they can see everything directly for their son or daughter within the school. Even if they've got multiple students in the school, they can see all of that information in one place. That could be their gradebook results, how well they're doing in certain topics. That could be any events or any notifications that are particular for them, sports fixtures, any things that are coming up, any notes they need to sign, or just their homework calendar, so they can see how well they're doing with their timetables, etc., on there. Yeah, that transparency is a great feature, or a great thing to promote in your school.
Mm-hmm. Right, we've already touched on some of this, but even though all of this fantastic stuff's in place, how can I as a classroom teacher use it? How can we track all of this?
Yeah, so with tracking, this is often the most time-consuming thing to worry about. But the reason it is so important is you have to be able to look at what you've done to be able to change, essentially. And it's being prepared to change and being able to prepare to adapt to those different things. But yeah, this is... so one of the things we like to talk about is collation. So having the heads of department collect how much homework is being set. Again, this seems like a laborious thing. But finding out, going to the staff room, having those staff meetings with the rest of the department, finding out all of that homework that's being set for the classes. Then you can look at that, you can check the quality, you can check the quantity, and then you can really see if that's matter or worthwhile for those students. So again, you can use spreadsheets. So a member of staff could the head of department could enter in all of that homework for the class. Better yet, you can have a shared spreadsheet and you can have putting that ownership back onto the rest of the teachers. They can fill out all of the information and again, sharing that workload. You don't want to bombard one individual with everything directly within the school, all of the workload, everything they need to do, spreading that workload amongst the teachers. So every member of staff, they have that ownership that they can log onto the system. They can put in, I've set this piece of homework, these were the results, etc., etc., etc. So filling down. So even when, so with reports, so we automate everything directly in Show My Homework. So you can receive automated reports on a variety of different topics. So that could be looking at how much homework's set, you can look at the quality, you can see some great tools to be used in parents' evenings. And these all can be scheduled and shared amongst your colleagues, anyone that is relevant within your school. Parents' evening. So you can actually, so one thing that I've spoken to teachers about in the past is actually pre-sharing what's going to be covered within parents' evenings. It can sometimes happen going into a parents' evening as parents. You've maybe had the wool pulled over your eyes for a month or so beforehand. And then when you get there, you're hit by that instant surprise. You don't know how to prepare. You don't know how to talk about solutions as such at that point. Sharing that content or sharing what's been going on within the students' lives up until that point beforehand, they can then prepare. And that short slot that you have with those teachers and with those parents, it can be spent very productive having those conversations on how you can tackle if there are any issues, or how we can sing praises of students that are doing amazingly well within their school. Another thing is tutor time. So it's hard. It can sometimes be hard to find out what's going on with students. So speaking to them and finding out what is going on at school. So are you getting too much homework? So finding their viewpoint or their idea. Because then you can actually see, okay, this student is receiving too much homework on this day. We can see why maybe they haven't been receiving any homework. Tracking all of this as well is super important for Ofsted. So dread to mention the name, but so Ofsted, if Ofsted come around, you can show them we have this amazing report, we have all of this tracking that we've been doing on our shared spreadsheets, etc. Whatever method you're using, the best thing is you have to know how to change. So putting all of that information in there, being prepared to change, and seeing what the next steps are. So I can show Ofsted, this is what we've been doing, this is what we're doing to get to the next step, this is what we're doing to improve on that. So a vital thing for tracking that within the system.
And I don't think I've ever been to a school where homework and homeschool communication haven't been part of the school improvement plan. So that's a fantastic way to facilitate that. Yeah. So all of these things are in place. We've got these different levels of interaction with homework, but obviously the overview for the entire school is really important. So why is a homework policy so important?
Well, I think fundamentally it's about managing the expectations of all the key stakeholders, keeping everyone on the same page about if we're going to have a homework policy and we're going to set homework, well, why are we setting the homework? Why is it important? What do we expect from parents? What do we expect from students? And to those stakeholders, to students and to parents, well, what are we doing as teaching staff to make sure that we give timely feedback, that we have some empathy when we're setting homework, that we're not setting too much on the same day? How can we make it easy for those parents and those students to access it, like I said before, in a way that's convenient for them, without students having to become messengers or spend time in lessons writing down homework when it's not really the best use of time in a class. And I guess what we've done ultimately, I found when I was teaching, we'd often have policies in schools that sit on the school network drive, but fundamentally they're just Word documents, and people go to them now and again, or once a year when you come to review them. They're quite difficult to actually enforce and be true to yourself that actually we've said this, that we should only set homework, once a week to year 7 students. Well, are we actually doing it? And if we're doing that, well, what's the next part? Well, if we're setting homework, well, what's the quality? Who's looking at the quality? Is it worthwhile? Is it moving the needle? Do the students know why they're doing it? And what we've tried to do with this policy and with some of the tools that Henry has talked about is make it really easy for those teachers to be able to track it and to create that transparency. So it's not a ball ache. So by the time you do this, it's not, you can do it in a way that's so fast, it's not out of date. And quite often the current methods of tracking homework, managing the homework process, it's so laborious that by the time you've done it, it's already out of date. And ultimately what we've tried to do is just put it in a format that you can use. Whether you use our software or not, we hope this document will be useful for you. It will at least get you to, give you the opportunity to sit down and think about what you're doing with homework within your school. And, that's really the key thing for us. Like, we want to ultimately make homework worthwhile because we know millions of students, teachers, and families, it's impacted them every single day, whether you're from the UK or to some of our schools all the way to New Zealand. And we just want to make the whole process better. So I hope this document is useful for you. I believe everyone who's who's attended our webinar today will be able to download it and make use of it. And yeah, that's it really.
Yep, so we'll send you out some email details how to get hold of the document you can see on your screen, which looks incredibly professional, I have to say. It looks fantastic. Can't wait to read it myself. So thank you very much for listening to the webinar. And all I have to say is that I've been Martin Burrett, and I've been chatting with Naimish Gohill and Henry Otterwill. And if you haven't had your fill of homework so far, then you can join UKEdChat tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock. Where we'll all be chatting. To find out more details of that, just simply go to UKEdChat.com and find out about that and everything we do there. But otherwise, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Goodbye.